So I bought a used Zooka pitching machine, and the battery needed a replacement. And I've done that for a bunch of different Zookas before. It's no big deal. Usually you just buy a $20 battery off of Amazon and you have a brand new battery. But I got this one here and I popped it out, and immediately I noticed that the battery was different. You can see this kind of configuration here. And it looks identical to this newer model. You can't, by the eye, see that anything's different. But when you go and you try and put the battery, which fits in the newer model just fine, see this here, you go and you try and fit it in the older model, and it doesn't fit. And it turns out this one is, I forget the exact size, but we can line them up here. And you can see that one is shorter than the other. They're lined up the same about right there. So unfortunately, that's not a big deal. But this battery is over $100 with shipping online. It's a very obscure battery size. So obviously we want to try and use the $20 one. Now, if you look over at this one, you can see that there's a plastic tab, and it's lined up with this piece of metal for reinforcement on the battery. Just the plastic tab holds the battery on the other side. And on the case up here, this is where the battery goes on top when you put the case. It's the same thing, that the tab is lined up with the metal to provide reinforcement. Now when you go over to this one here, you can see that this tab is, quarter inch or whatever behind this metal bumper. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut this metal right in line with the plastic bumper on 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll be able to fit the cheap battery. I think it's worth mentioning too that this battery that they have in here is 8 amp hours, the expensive one, and the cheap one on the newer models is 12 amp hours, which I'll show you here. 12 amp hours. So the connections are all the same as well. So I tested it out. Obviously the amp hours is not going to affect the use. You'll just get more pitches out of it. So that's what I intend to do for the battery retrofit. So I've made the cuts best I could. Basically this was here, and I cut it down trying to get as flush as I could with a little tab. The tab, I kind of cut into it a little bit. That wasn't the best job that I did. But the battery will go up against here, so it hits up against here, so it's still supported. Maybe I'll buff this out so there's no edge, and I'll maybe put a little pad here, like something like this, a little cushy thing to absorb. And that's the same thing here. Now, these tabs are going to go right here. We're going to do this one on camera so you can kind of get a sense of it. And what I'm using is this oscillating saw. Probably not the best attachment, but I'm just using a wood and metal thing. But it seemed to work really well, actually. It was able to get in that, might have been the best thing, actually. It was able to get that angle really nice and hopefully get flush. So let me move this out of the way. There's a little cable there. And then I'll turn this over to my son, who's going to film me. Get right on in here. And you can see, I kind of cut into it a little bit, but that's not a big deal. So we'll still get a little bit of that firm support from the metal as it goes against that tab. And I'll do this side. And so here we have the bigger battery, which is what the units currently use. And here's the moment of truth. Place this right in here. And you can see there's the normal amount of spacing here. And then down there, probably put a little bit of padding here. And it should be pretty good as far as making it nice and snug, especially when I get a little padding. Now I have a different tool, Dremel, so circular. I have this thing on. I really don't know if it's the right thing. No better way to learn than post on YouTube how to do something and then have people correct you. It's the fastest way to get the right answer. But I'm using this to smooth out a little bit of this edge here. So one problem that you're going to have with your Zooka is that when it fires, the recoil is going to cause it to go up, and no matter how tight you tighten it on the stand, it seems like you constantly need to adjust it. Now you can see here on this used one, like the grooves have been worn thin where all of the pressure meets when the stand locks. So all we're going to do to fix that is take some sandpaper. You can see kind of the coarseness here. You just need to rough it up basically. So get it real nice and tight here. My son's helping me. I'm just gonna rough this up. This is probably a little thicker than what I've done in the past. I'm just using what I have available. And then you can, this is a little finer grain. And then I'm just going to repeat that process with this side. And you can do it with the stand itself, but really, this is what you want to get. Now we're cutting out some padding material. We kind of gauged where it's going to come into contact with this here. And we just added some padding so it's not going to puncture the battery, and so it'll be nice and snug. Alright, so we added a little sticky padding here, just similar to how the battery came for the other unit. And we'll see how this fits. So we did a pretty good job with this padding right there. See, it's pretty snug. This one, I think we need a little bit bigger padding just in case, or another piece for the end, I should say. A little difficult to see here, so we just kind of put it against the actual metal itself just to have a little bumper. 40% power setting, full battery.